What if the most consequential 72 hours in Dallas Cowboys football this decade started not with a splashy press conference or a headline trade, but with a quiet virtual meeting, a defensive lineman from Alabama, and a front office that has finally decided it is done rebuilding from the inside out? Pittsburgh is 8 days away. The board is set. The opportunities are sitting right in front of Jerry Jones, and every one of them demands a decision before the clock runs out on this draft weekend. Welcome to Cowboys Reality Check. I'm your host, and today we're going deep on 4 separate storylines that could reshape this roster before the first snap of the 2026 season. We're talking about a defensive end whose name you might not know yet, but whose fit in Christian Parker's system is almost impossible to ignore. We are talking about a slot corner who is still available via trade, and who could walk into Dallas and fix a hole that has been sitting open all offseason. We're talking about Maxx Crosby being floated again as a live in-draft trade target, and a scenario making more sense right now than it ever has before. And we're talking about a quarterback out of LSU who had a private workout with Dallas, and whose very presence in that room tells you something important about where this franchise actually believes it is headed. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button right now and join the Cowboys Reality Check community, because what we are about to get into is exactly why this fan base never sleeps this time of year. Let's go. LT Overton is on the Dallas Cowboys' radar heading into draft weekend, and the interest is being described as significant. According to Joe Rodriguez of the Frisco Report, Dallas held a virtual meeting with the Alabama defensive lineman, and the front office is paying real attention to what this prospect brings to the table. When you start digging into the film and understanding what Christian Parker is trying to build on the defensive side of the ball, the fit begins making a tremendous amount of sense very quickly. Parker has been clear throughout this entire offseason about what he wants from his defense. He wants versatility. He wants players who can operate in multiple alignments, create pre-snap confusion, and make life difficult for offensive coordinators who think they have a schematic answer ready. But the foundation of everything Parker runs traces back to his time in the Vic Fangio system, which is built at its core on a 3 to 4 base structure. That is exactly the world LT Overton was built to inhabit. A classic example of an Alabama defensive lineman in the Fangio mold: big, tough, sturdy, powerful, and disciplined. Overton brings the anchor and strong hands needed to two-gap effectively in the run game. That description should mean something to every Cowboys fan who watched this defense get gashed on the ground in 2025. Overton began his career as a 5-star recruit who chose Texas A&M over Georgia, Oklahoma, Oregon, and Alabama before ultimately transferring to the Crimson Tide in 2024, citing his connection with defensive line coach Freddie Roach and his familiarity with the program. Across his 2 seasons in Tuscaloosa, he recorded 84 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. At the NFL Scouting Combine, he measured in at 6 feet, 3 inches, and 274 pounds. The size is real. The physicality is real. And the production, while not eye-popping on a stat sheet, tells the story of a player who does the kind of work that makes everyone around him better. NFL.com's Lance Zierlein was both complimentary and honest in his evaluation. He described Overton as possessing impressive power and a rugged demeanor. Though he was direct that Overton is not going to threaten tackles around the corner with his first-step quickness. That is a fair and accurate read. This is not a speed-to-power rusher. This is not a gap shooter trying to blow past blockers with athleticism. Overton's physical tools, versatility, and relentless effort give him an extremely high floor as a dominant early down defender at the next level. And that is a specific and valuable thing when you understand what Parker needs at the base of his defensive structure. The Cowboys moved Osa Odigizwa to San Francisco in exchange for a 3rd-round pick earlier this offseason. And that transaction makes a great deal more sense when you look at it through the lens of this reported interest. Parker is actively reshaping this defensive line around his system, and Overton is precisely the kind of player who fits that mold at the 5 technique position. He fits best in multiple front defenses, sliding inside on passing downs where his power and length challenge interior blockers, and his 1,529 career snaps across varied alignments demonstrate real positional versatility that helps coordinators create pre-snap confusion. While Overton put together impressive production in 2024, his pressure totals decreased in 2025, which has raised some questions about his adaptability. That decline likely needs context, however, as opponents began scheming specifically to neutralize his impact, chipping him more frequently before he had developed effective countermoves. That is a correctable problem with NFL-level coaching, and if Dallas lands him in the middle rounds with a specific intent of deploying him in Parker's base package, the development trajectory makes sense for both sides. A fourth-round selection would be an ideal outcome for Dallas, giving the franchise a legitimate contributor without spending premium capital on a non-premium position. Cowboys Nation might not know his name today. By October, they might be very glad Jerry Jones does. And that is exactly how value is built in an NFL draft. Not by chasing the loudest names on the board, but by identifying the players who fit the specific system you're trying to run and getting them at the right price. Now let's move to Kenny Moore too, because this one is urgent, and the window is closing faster than some people realize. The veteran cornerback and the Indianapolis Colts have mutually agreed to seek a trade ahead of the 2026 season, leaving Moore as an intriguing name for teams seeking secondary help. Sports Illustrated senior NFL insider Albert Breer recently named the Dallas Cowboys as one of the teams that should make this call, pointing directly to the slot corner role as a critical piece in Christian Parker's defense and the Cowboys' need after Jordan Lewis departed to Jacksonville last year. Breer was not hedging when he made this point. He stated clearly that Moore, who turns 31 in August, is in a contract year, which drives down his value somewhat, but that if the price was a day 3 pick on the higher end and a team had a need like Dallas, he would make that deal. That is a direct endorsement from one of the most plugged-in insiders in the entire NFL media landscape, and it deserves to be taken seriously. The need is absolutely real. Jordan Lewis is gone. The slot corner role is vacant in a meaningful way. P.J. Locke and Jalen Thompson can handle some snaps in the slot. Both were brought in this offseason as part of Parker's secondary rebuild, but neither of them is a primary nickel cornerback. Darren Bland preferred the outside corner position, and his injury-plagued 2025 season was an issue regardless of where they planned to use him. That hole does not fix itself on draft night without burning premium capital that Dallas may want to preserve for other priorities. Moore fixes it immediately without touching either first-round pick. And here is what makes the timing of this conversation particularly interesting. If Dallas decides to package those 2 first-round picks at 12 and 20 to trade up for a top defensive prospect, the rest of the roster still has to be filled out. Jerry Jones himself admitted earlier this offseason to undervaluing the slot position when the Cowboys did not re-sign Jordan Lewis, and Parker has been explicit that every good defense needs a reliable nickel corner at its core. A Moore trade via draft weekend becomes the smart, affordable move that addresses a genuine need without disrupting whatever strategy Dallas deploys at the top of the board. Moore has been a significant presence in the NFL secondary conversation for years. He has accumulated 21 career interceptions, 4 of which he returned for touchdowns, and earned an elite run defense grade in 2025 while carrying the kind of professional experience that a young secondary desperately needs around it. He turns 31 in August, which drives his trade value down on paper, but that same reality is precisely why the price stays at a day 3 pick rather than something that actually hurts the franchise's long-term roster construction. Dallas currently holds 3 fifth-round picks in this draft, including 2 compensatory selections. The cost here is almost nothing when you stack it against what Moore actually brings to this defense for the 2026 season. This is a 9-year professional who has spent his entire career mastering exactly the position Christian Parker has identified as a cornerstone of his scheme. A Moore trade could take until the start of day 3 to materialize, as teams look to address their secondary needs through the draft on the first 2 days. But if Dallas misses out on the slot options it prefers, circling back to the Colts for Moore would provide a legitimate starting caliber option in the nickel for the entire season. Cowboys Nation has watched this slot corner hole sit unaddressed throughout the entire offseason. Draft weekend is the last realistic window to fix it at this price. The question is whether Dallas is willing to make the call before someone else does. Overton as the under-the-radar run stopper, who fits Parker's system in the middle rounds. Moore as the slot corner fix for the price of a day 3 pick. 2 different moves, 2 different price tags, and 2 different problems solved before Pittsburgh even kicks off. Which one becomes the priority this draft weekend? Drop your answer in the comments right now, and tell me which move you need to see Dallas make first. Subscribe if you think both of these should happen before this draft is over, because what is coming next involves Maxx Crosby and the in-draft trade scenario that this fan base has been waiting on all offseason long. The Crosby saga never really ended. Every time you thought this story had reached its conclusion, it found a new chapter, and right now Maxx Crosby is being floated once again as a live in-draft trade target for the Dallas Cowboys. Fansided's Jake Beckman named Crosby as one of 7 players who should be traded during the 2026 NFL Draft, and he specifically identified the Cowboys as an ideal landing spot. When you understand the full context surrounding Crosby's current situation, the argument carries considerably more weight than a casual offseason trade rumor. Earlier this offseason, the Ravens traded for Crosby, exchanging their first-round picks in 2026 and 2027. Then the deal fell apart when Baltimore backed out due to medical concerns, and Crosby returned to Las Vegas. His trade value took a massive hit from that entire sequence. A player who was worth 2 first-round picks in March was suddenly available at a steep discount because the medical scare had poisoned the well in the minds of most front offices. But value that drops can only go back up, and the window to acquire Crosby at a reduced price is right now, before the season proves he is still elite and before that price climbs back to where it was. Beckman's argument from the Raiders' perspective is straightforward. Las Vegas signed a significant number of players this offseason and spent heavily on defense, and now finds itself stuck with Crosby's contract on top of all of it. With 10 picks in the 2026 draft, including the first overall selection and 3 fourth-round picks, trading Crosby for a first-round pick could allow them to trade back into the first round and address their receiver needs, a position they desperately require help at to support Fernando Mendoza. The logic works on both sides of the transaction. For Dallas, adding Crosby opposite Rashawn Gary would create the most dangerous pass rush tandem this defense has featured in years. 2 legitimate edge threats force offensive coordinators into impossible decisions on every single snap. Do you chip one? Do you slide protection? Do you leave your tackles on island? Whatever answer they choose creates a problem somewhere else. And that ripple effect is what makes an elite pass rush pairing so transformative for an entire defense. Rotationally across this line, alongside interior disruption, the multiplication factor of having 2 credible edge threats becomes a force that lifts every other piece of this unit. The medical concerns are real and cannot be dismissed. When the Ravens backed out, his value plummeted, but it has been climbing since, and the opportunity exists to acquire him before the season proves he is healthy and fully himself again, which is exactly when his price tag will escalate back toward what Baltimore was willing to pay. If Dallas does its homework thoroughly and the medical staff believes he is healthy, this is the kind of high-ceiling swing that championship rosters are built around. Jerry Jones loves a moment. Pulling off a Crosby trade live on draft night with the entire league watching would be exactly the kind of splash that defines a franchise's offseason in the collective memory of the fan base. Cowboys Nation has been waiting for a move of this magnitude all offseason. The draft board is almost set. The clock is ticking, and the opportunity is sitting right there in the Nevada desert if Jerry is willing to pick up the phone. Before we close out, there is one more thread that deserves serious attention, and it is the one that will tell you the most about where this franchise actually believes it is headed over the next 3 or 4 years. NFL insider Ryan Fowler confirmed that LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier has held private workouts with the Cowboys, the Rams, and the Jets, and that he currently projects as a likely day 2 pick competing for the 3rd quarterback position in this class alongside Carson Beck, Drew Aller, and a handful of others. Stop and think about what that private workout actually means for a moment. Dallas did not bring Nussmeier in by accident. You do not schedule organize and conduct a private pre-draft workout for a quarterback unless the front office has a genuine interest in that player and in what he could become inside this organization. The quarterback room is not as settled as the public messaging suggests. 10 months ago, this conversation looked completely different. At various points during the 2025 college football season, Nussmeier was being discussed as a potential top 15 pick and one of the most exciting quarterback prospects in this draft class. An early abdominal injury threw off his entire senior season, limiting him to just 9 games and causing a rapid fall from potential top 15 pick today to prospect that happened faster than almost anyone anticipated. But the talent that created that earlier projection did not disappear. The physical tools are intact. The arm is the same arm it always was. The injury created the narrative collapse. It did not change the underlying player. As a junior in 2024, Nussmeier completed 64.2% of his passes for 4,052 yards with 29 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, leading the SEC in completions and attempts. The interception total tells you something about his style. Aggressive, high risk, willing to force throws into tight windows, the kind of quarterback who will both win you games and occasionally break your heart in the same quarter. The Athletic's Dane Brugler characterized him as an aggressive competitor whose arm talent and command are foundational traits that generally translate well to the NFL, projecting him as a high-level backup and spot starter at the next level. His former head coach Brian Kelly offered a strong endorsement as well, highlighting Nussmeier's football IQ, his off-platform throwing ability, and his willingness to wait his turn behind Jaden Daniels rather than transferring when another opportunity was available. Kelly called him a competitor he could not wait to see thrive in the NFL. That is not a throwaway quote. That is a head coach who watched this kid compete every single day in practice and in games, putting his credibility behind a former player heading into the most important evaluation period of that player's professional life. Here is where Dallas fits into this picture specifically. Dak Prescott is still an elite quarterback and turns 33 in July. That puts the Cowboys at roughly 3 to 4 more years of legitimate Super Bowl contention with their starter, assuming health and continued performance. Sam Howell was brought in to challenge Joe Milton as the backup. And if the front office has determined that Milton is not the long-term developmental answer at the position, then a quarterback pick begins to make a great deal of sense in the middle or later rounds. Private workouts do not happen by accident. Dallas looked at Nussmeier closely enough to bring him in, and that decision alone tells you something important about how this front office views the quarterback room when the cameras are not rolling. Pittsburgh is 8 days away, and every move Dallas makes between now and the final pick of that draft weekend echoes for years. This is the full picture that is sitting right in front of Jerry Jones and the Cowboys organization. LT Overton fits Christian Parker's system in the middle rounds without costing premium capital. A powerful, disciplined SEC-tested run stopper who would anchor the base of this defensive line in exactly the scheme Dallas is trying to run. Kenny Moore, too, fixes the slot corner hole for the price of a day 3 pick, bringing 9 years of professional experience, elite run defense production, and the kind of veteran steadiness that a young secondary desperately needs around it. Maxx Crosby as a live-in draft trade will be the most explosive move this franchise makes all weekend, creating a pass rush pairing opposite Rashawn Gary that would fundamentally change what this defense is capable of doing on every single snap. And Garrett Nussmeier could quietly reshape a quarterback room that nobody outside of one Cowboys way is paying close enough attention to. This defense was the worst in the league last season. That is not an opinion or a hot take. It is a documented, historically bad performance that cost this franchise games it should have won and kept it out of postseason it had the offensive talent to compete in. No more excuses. No more offseason promises that do not translate into real results on the field. The capital is there. The opportunities are right there. The moment is right there. Now it is time for this organization to deliver. Pittsburgh is 8 days away, and the Cowboys are out of time to wait. Drop your take in the comments below. Tell us which of these moves you need to see Dallas make before that first pick is turned in on draft night. This space belongs to every single person who has ever screamed, "How about them Cowboys?" and refused to give up on this team through the hard years and the frustrating ones and the years when we knew better was coming. Tomorrow we keep going. Cowboys reality check.